Today on Smackey's Garage, we're going to be talking about an age-old question. What do you prefer? Do you prefer to be tinkering with the car, have it apart, and having constant projects? Or do you prefer to be taking it out, cruising with it, and enjoying it? Or is there some mix in the middle? Let's go ahead, let's talk about it a little bit.
A little bit of gas, but
Runs. So if you're following along with this channel, you know this is my 1969 Mustang. It is constantly torn apart and I'm constantly tinkering with it. If you've been following along for the past few weeks, you've noticed that I've added a new export brace to it, or shock tower brace, whatever your preference to call it is. You know, this brace has been added in, like most car projects, it ends up with me going to do things that I did not think I'd have to do to get it installed, such as remove the dash and disconnect the heater core to install a few bolts. Like every project, it turns into something much more complicated than usual. And because of that, I typically don't end up driving the car as much because it's always apart. And this channel is one of the key drivers of why this car is always taken apart. And then coming up on the channel, I have a bunch of other projects that I need to do to this car, that I want to do to this car. You know, I spent a good amount of money on QA1 coilovers for the front of this, but I haven't changed them over yet. So that needs to come apart. And I know that when I do end up changing them over, looking at the brackets up here, these are probably going to have to be made thinner because looking through the instructions, it says, you know, doesn't work with every shock tower export kit that raises up these areas that it connects on. So gonna have to make some changes there. I already can tell that's gonna be a big project. It's also gonna require an alignment. Now with these projects, you know, really start getting into the question, you know, what do I enjoy more? Do I enjoy more taking the car apart, working on it, or do I enjoy cruising with it? Or what mix is it? Now down in the comments, what I wanna hear is, what's your ideal mix of working on the car versus driving it? Is it 50-50, you enjoy 50% of the time working on the car, 50% of the car driving it? Or you're gonna end up like me where it's 95% working on the car and then 5% actually driving the car. Now, one of the projects that you might have noticed is that I'm working on now, that a video has come out on, is I've actually gone back to running a choke and I'm not running the brolic carburetor anymore. I've had so many issues starting this car over the past year that I've decided to go back and just run the Ultra 750. So last week you probably saw the video where I was replacing the throttle blades on this, and I ended up taking them all apart and putting back ones that do not have holes in it because I'm working through the tune on this. I want to make sure that I get it right. But as I'm taking these apart, you know, it definitely causes me to spend less time driving the car and more time working on it. You know, you'll notice that right now the choke isn't connected to anything because to do that, I have to run the cable from the dash all the way to the carburetor again, and that's just extra work. Now for myself, looking at how much time that I spend working on this car, I probably spend about 95% of the time working on it and 5% driving it. And to be honest, that feels about right for what I enjoy. Now, one of the things that I really like is documenting the rebuild of this, going through modifications of this, and sharing it with everyone on YouTube. But the other side of it is actually taking it out and getting to cruise. Honestly, I don't get to drive it that often just because, you know, the weather around here has been so sporadic recently, which is kind of disappointing, but I'm hoping over the next week I can start taking it out and driving it. I'll probably do a video on my first cruise with it. But as you can see here, my entire dash is taken apart because I was working on the export bar, which probably something that's you're not supposed to happen, but did. With all these projects, it really got me thinking about what's my ideal percentage of working on these cars versus driving them. Now, for myself, you know, I'd probably say it's probably 90 to 95% working on it with 5 to 10% driving it. I really, really enjoy driving this car. I really enjoy taking it places. But, you know, for myself, I really enjoy working on it, maintaining it, and keeping it up. Now, I spend a lot of my day on computers working on different projects, essentially staring at a screen. So actually being able to take a break, work with my hands, and tinker on something that's completely mechanical, it's a lot more fun to me. I definitely enjoy that a lot more than I do just taking it out for a cruise. I would rather have this apart, working on a project, than just cruising down the road. But I will say I do enjoy driving it a lot. I just don't do it as often just because, you know, it's mostly taken apart. I'm always working on something on it. Now, I do have cars that I get to drive for a little bit of fun, and I do enjoy those. I do enjoy driving a lot. It's just, I prefer having it apart. I prefer working on it, making small improvements to it, and then driving it a few times every year. You know, I've told myself I'm going to try to drive it a little bit more this year. So far, I actually haven't had it on the road once, but I need to go for an inspection sticker next month, so everything needs to be buttoned up and ready to go. So I'm really curious to hear down in the comments what you actually prefer on how much time you spend on your car working on it, on a project versus actually taking it out and enjoying it. All right, now we can see if we can get it running. A few small things we need to do. Like I said, it's in project state, not really in drivable state. So I don't have the dash in it, so that is not really an issue, but it is sitting back here on the car. We do need to manipulate the choke itself because I don't have the cable on it, which I'll show you in a second. Now for the choke, I'm gonna try to find the ideal spot of where I want it. I'm gonna put it in a place where the throttle is up. So I'm gonna check the throttle blades and make sure that is moving, so down here. So looking down here, you can make sure that is moving. I'm gonna open it a little bit until I see that in a good place. And then I'm gonna go ahead and leave it there. And that's where we're gonna start it at. Give it a little battery power. Open the door. So we should be good to see if it'll start. Like I was saying, the interior isn't in it yet, so, or at least the dash isn't in it yet. I'm gonna give it one pump. Vacuum pump just hit on. So I'm gonna push it once and start it. All right, so it does run. It is trying to start. The choke needs to be open a little bit more. It's probably, yeah, you can see some smoke out there. So we'll go ahead. Give me a little bit more air through there. And try again. A little bit of gas, but we are idling, not too bad. Now for upcoming projects, a few things I've noticed. You know, that power steering belt over there is definitely whipping around a little bit. So it did make some noise when I start turning. That is obviously way too loose, that needs to be fixed. You know, up here you can see I don't have the cable on here anymore, but I was able to manually manipulate it. Everything is running good. Looks like the fuel levels of the carburetor are good. You can see it on both sides. A little bit of a leak from where I cut the hose, but that'll drain out. Runs. So let me know down in the comments what percentage of the time you prefer working on your car versus actually driving it. So I'll see you next time on Smackey's Garage.